All right, let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to our webinar, Forms Management Fees, Greater Insights into the Status of Forms. My name is Nick Vergara. I'm the Marketing Specialist here at Square 9. I'm here today with our Director of Solutions Development, Dan Miranda, as well as our CEO, Steve Young, who will guide us through the new HR onboarding tools and benefits in GlobalForms. Just before we get started, this webinar is being recorded, and we will share that with you after the presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, please submit them through the Q&A feature located at the bottom of the Zoom platform, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. So with all that, I will kick that over to Steve.
Sounds great. Thank you, Nick. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our GlobalForms. Well, it says Summer 22 Forms Management, but it's feeling a lot more like winter today. In any event, what we wanted to talk about today was we had something that was building off of our summer release, which is why you see that. So again, just to introduce myself briefly, my name is Steve Young, and again, I'm the President and CEO here of Square 9. I do have Dan Miranda, our Director of Solutions Development, who's also joining me today. And what we wanted to do was take you through just briefly some things around GlobalForms 10. And so again, our summer release in 2022 had a lot of new feature functionality that was released, and it was all focused on making solution building a lot easier. What we wanted to do was give you a practical use case, give you an example of how you can use that technology to digitally transform a process. And in this particular case, we chose human resources because we thought it just lent itself extremely well, and we're going to take you through that. We wanted to show you some of the advanced functionality that was built into that release around receiving and tracking in-flight forms. And then for those of you who are interested, we'd also like to talk just briefly about something that's currently in an early adopters program, something that we refer to as Transform AI, which is a new AI-driven capture process for invoices and receipts. A lot of excitement around it. We've had a number of sales recently around this through the early adopters program. So with all that said, we're also going to do a product demonstration. Rather than hear me talk about what we can do, I thought we'd have Dan show you what it was all about. So without any further ado, I'm going to jump right into it. Again, just briefly, for those of you who aren't familiar with the 2022 release, it was tagged with a line called Common Task Simplified. And it was really about taking the complexity around advanced forms development and making it a lot easier. Our goal was to provide new tools for simplifying forms deployment, really make it easier for people to embrace. We wanted to improve support for things like calculations that could be used to drive conditional logic, both within the forms and in downstream business practices as well. We wanted to also share the multi-level workflows with permission-based viewing privileges that we could do. And again, that lent itself very well in this HR process. And we wanted to show how it could be used in tandem with GlobalSearch or to support other content repositories, even competitive products like SharePoint or OneDrive. So what we mean by Common Task Simplified, again, this was a goal, like I said, our development team embraced, but really as a company, we all got behind as a way of moving forward. The development team was really looking at what was previously low code and moving that to no code. So if you're not familiar, or even if you are familiar with the GlobalForms platform, there's a lot that you can do with it. GlobalForms is an immensely powerful platform, but much of that required JavaScript to do some things. What we wanted to do is take that functionality and turn it into simple drag and drop operations. We also wanted to enhance the localization of this product. You know, we have our friends who are north of the border who some of the government mandates there require that they work in French, or for our partners in Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and in the UK, we wanted to make it easy to localize GlobalForms, just like it is in the rest of our product stack. And then finally, we wanted to provide a means for simplified task management. Again, the ability to provide customized work queues that give you improved visibility of really where your forms are throughout their workflow process. So one of the first things that I wanted to talk about was this new queue task list design tool. Again, the goal of it was to deliver those insights into the form status while in process, but also giving managers a centralized location where they could see all the form types. So for example, throughout the course of the day, I might approve vendor invoices, time off requests, purchases, different types of things. I don't want to have to go into multiple portals. I want to go into one place where I can see anything that's requiring my attention and my approval and be able to handle it from there. And our customers work very much the same way. Also, we want to eliminate that reliance on email for interaction. You know, workflow is great, getting an email and being able to take an action on it, but what happens when you can't take care of it right away? We'd rather have those processes aggregate, if you will, and be able to show you one place where you could go back and approve everything all at once when you do have the time to address it properly. So with all these new tools, I went to our development team and I said, you know, here's the challenge. I want you to show our customers and our partners how easily all these things can be delivered. I want you to show them forms distribution. I want you to show them how we manage the forms process from beginning to end. I want to show them access to completed forms. And more importantly, I want that consolidated user interface specific to the process at hand. For those of you who haven't met Dan Miranda before, he is our guru on that in that area. Dan was promoted last year to a director of solutions design, or actually it was earlier this year. And he's done an amazing job. He and his team are responsible for going out and looking for common solutions to problems that our customers share. So again, things like human resources or W-9 management, and actually building out end-to-end processes that we can then deliver to you with very little effort and great efficiency. So we looked at the human resources side of this as, again, a very good example. And one of the first questions that came up is, okay, well, wait a second, I already have an HRMS system. I'm using ADP, for example. Why do I need a forms management system? What's the difference? So really, when you look at an HRMS system, it focuses on employee data. It's a collection point. And again, we use ADP ourselves, and we use that for, again, most of our HRMS functions. It's great for payroll transmission. It stores all our employee demographics, emergency contacts, things like that. We put our company policies in it where everyone can share those. And it's a great tool for PTO management. However, forms management is about documentation. It's about eliminating the paper that's associated with human resources management. So it not only manages records, it creates them. It ensures compliance with government mandates. It manages the retention schedules, ensuring that, again, you're in compliance. And it secures and protects the employee's information in a fully HIPAA compliant repository. So again, Dan and his team went out and created this new path to employees' records management. And the focus initially was on onboarding, really onboarding in an employee management portal. Again, we wanted easy forms management. So we wanted to be able to send a single form. Say, for example, you want someone to fill out their W-9 or their W-4, that's fine. You can send a single form, but you could also take the entire forms package and send that out to the employee in one fell swoop. And at the same time, we wanted you to be able to modify that and say, what's included in my forms package? Not everyone is the same. Depending on the position, there might be conditional types of forms that would go along with a particular role. So if you look at a standard onboarding process here in the United States, it could include anything from employee contracts. Again, we have the W-4 form for taxes. We have the I-9 for employment authorization, saying that you're legal to work here in the United States. We have the background authorization forms, employee information sheets, payroll information sheets, and it goes on and on. And there's a lot that will happen in this onboarding process that we can digitize. So what Dan did is he created a new forms management tool all around HR that would show you where these forms are once they're sent out. So rather than greeting your employee with a stack of paper on the first day of their job and saying, here, I'd like you to complete all this, and having them take the first 45 minutes, you could literally send them a link to this portal and actually have them go in before they even arrive for their first day on the job and have them complete all that documentation. At the same time, we had to provide a management dashboard. And a good example of that is the I-9 form. So when you complete an I-9 form, it has to go to your manager, who needs to collect a copy of your license, your proof of residency, and your ability to work in the United States. So it has to go through that process. So it needed to go through a workflow where that information can be collected and then be approved. So again, with this management dashboard, we also gave you some functionality where you could quickly add forms, modify pick lists, or add new departments. Again, making it very flexible for your organization. But we didn't want to stop just at the onboarding process. When you look at the employee, what they call hire to retire, we wanted to create a self-service portal where employees could go in and say, hey, I need to fill out a change of emergency contact form. I'm no longer living with my parents. I got married. I want to make my wife my emergency contact. I want to change my banking information. I want to change my beneficiary on my insurance or my address form. Any types of these things. Again, this is all paperwork that takes place throughout the course of an employee's tenure that we wanted to be able to digitize. In addition to that, it's very easy to take this product, GlobalForms, and extend it to other forms of business applications. So again, one of the things that we're seeing commonly now is the distribution and management of W-9 forms in any finance or tax office. The distribution in our education package of parental approval forms in K-12 education and special education. And also the distribution of things like delivery and acceptance forms and lease financing. So again, an incredibly flexible product, an incredibly powerful product. And we're going to have in just 1 minute Dan show you what he created. Before we do that, I wanted to share this case study with you. And this is a great example of how digitally transforming your human resources department can benefit it. So Armstrong Subway's been a customer of ours for a long time. Again, they are a franchisee of the Subway sandwich stores who have multiple locations. They had 20,000 archived documents. And again, after implementing this, they estimate that they're saving just in processing time about 20 hours per week. They're also saving about $20,000 annually thanks to the streamlining of the company's workflow, eliminating the need for additional hires. One of the things I didn't mention on this slide is they were also finding themselves in a position where they may have to pay fines to the government for failure to collect W-9s. It's very difficult when you're in an industry, any type of retail industry, whether it's franchises like this, whether it's retail locations like a 7-Eleven, when you have high turnover and when you have an employment team, employees that come back frequently, you really need to have a better way for managing this process in a distributed environment. So again, Teresa Sherwood was a great partner of ours. She's the office manager at Armstrong Subway. And again, quickly made the case for an investment like this and a solution for human resources management. Now, before I turn you over to Dan, I wanted to share, again, something that we refer to as Transform AI. And this, again, is still in our early adopters program. We'll be formally announcing this in December, but I figured since I had an audience, I had to talk about it. Again, this is a cloud service that leverages artificial technologies and also incorporates some optional machine learning to extract high-value information from invoices and receipts. So, if you're a customer of ours now and you've worked with our products, you know that OCR is a huge benefit to automating the capture and building that ROI around AP invoice processing. But it also typically requires some level of template creation. Well, with Transform AI, there is no template creation. Global Capture simply calls the service as part of a workflow. All of its relevant fields are automatically extracted, and it supports both typed and handwritten data. So the way that Transform AI works is that it's simply part of a Global Capture workflow. So when you're building out your workflow, the invoice would come in. These would be 3 added nodes, really 2 and 1 optional. The first would be post payable. That node sends the document to our cloud AI engine. The AI engine is dynamically scaled and it processes those documents asynchronously. Once it's completed, there's another node in the workflow that looks out to the engine to see if there's any documents ready to be picked up. And it takes the results from the AI engine for a specific document, pulls back the data and the document for that. And then third, we have an option for vendor machine learning. And again, this is done on a per customer basis. You can incorporate this, but you don't have to. I think it brings a lot of value to it, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. But what we're doing is we're looking to extract a number of fields, both in invoices and receipts data, which are about 60% of where our customers start. They're looking to automate some area around AP or AR. And AI identifiable fields include things like the vendor's name, the invoice or receipt total, receiver address, invoice name and number and receipt date, all that kind of information, and do this seamlessly and quickly. Now, I mentioned the benefits of machine learning before, but I wanted to expand on that for just a moment. Transform AI, again, extracts all of this information, but one of the most difficult pieces of information to get out of an invoice is the vendor name. And it's probably one of the most important because, again, it can drive a lot of the workflow that around it. Looking at it from an OCR standpoint, this is frequently one of the most difficult fields to extract. And why that is that it's usually incorporated into a logo, a piece of graphic art that's up on the top of the document. And it can't always be read that easily by OCR engines. So by using machine learning, basically what you can do is incorporate this into your workflow. And what would happen is the first time it sees a vendor, regardless of what it sees, it will automatically ask the user to validate the name. And again, you want this name, if you're familiar all with invoice processing, you want it to match your master list of vendors, right? So it's got to be exact. So what you want to do is in order for you to be able to push that information into your system. So what you do is you actually would check it. If it's not correct, you correct it once, and then every time going forward with the machine learning, it would see that document, recognize it for what it is, and automatically incorporate the correct name and spelling of that vendor name. So again, very powerful tool. We have made this available so that we can demonstrate it to our customers very easily. Again, if you wanted to see your own documents transformed in this manner, simply contact your Square 9 regional sales manager. Again, what we've done is to make this easy is we've just set up a form where you can drag and drop. It's easy for me to say. You can drag and drop documents into it, put your email address into the form, and it will automatically extract the information and send you back an email showing the accuracy of this engine. It's really very remarkable. But again, it will send you back that invoice. It will show you all the data that extracted from the document and provide you an original copy of that as well. So if you'd like to see your own documents, if you'd like to see the evidence of how well this works, we've had some people put it through some pretty tough tests, and I have to say it's been doing a great job with that. So before I jump into or talk any further and take up the rest of the afternoon, I'm going to turn this over to Dan Miranda and have him give you a live demonstration of some of the things I've been talking about. Dan, you ready?
I am ready. Thanks,
All
Steve.
right. Take it away.
Everyone should be able to see my screen here. So Steve has been talking about our HR Essentials platform. So if you're not familiar with this platform, it's a quick and easy way to give you a foundation to modernize your human resource processes. So, one of the things that we've been focusing on quite a bit from the Square 9 end is really coming to the market with solutions that quickly solve problems, as Steve alluded to, HR Essentials being one of them. So before we dive in here, one thing to know is, the HR Essentials platform does integrate with our Business Essentials platform, which contains some pre-built archives for human resources. In addition to that, it also contains a number of pre-built forms in there. A couple to mention: I-9, your federal I-9, your federal W-4, drug screening authorization, background check authorization, just to name a few.
In addition to that, it also contains a number of different dashboards and views that allows you to manage the overall process that we set up here. What you're looking at on screen today is our start of the process, right? So we have pre-built portals as part of this process that you can publish to your website. So, if, for example, you wanted to modernize your application process, one of the forms that we include as part of that is a employment application. So this can be posted to your external website or linked to from your external website, or a portal which allows a user to start that process can be linked to from your external website. In addition to that, as a user moves forward through the process, and I'll just show you in just a second, they can complete onboarding paperwork. But very much a user can go in and simply, or a potential applicant can go in and fill out an application on your website, submit it, and from there you can continue to manage the process. So, from a solution standpoint, everything really starts off in a area we refer to as the management dashboard. So the management dashboard is where any HR administrator who's handling onboarding or hiring can really manage the overall process. So, up until this point, maybe you've had a couple people who've gone through and filled out your application on your website. You've looked through resumes, you've kind of made a decision on who is going to be hired and who you guys are going to pursue from a business standpoint. From this dashboard, you can kick off the onboarding process for a potential hire by sending them paperwork. And this is one of the new additions to this package. If we click the Send Paperwork button here, we can pick from any potential applicants or any applicants that have filled out that employment application. I'll select myself from here. We can populate information, select the department, and we can also select one or more forms that we would like to send. So from this form, we can send out any required paperwork that is necessary. If we have a default set of forms that needs to be completed, we can simply select them from the form category dropdown, click the Populate Forms button, and you'll see it pre-populates all the forms as part of this forms category. The predefined ones that we have as part of the solution: direct deposit, background check, emergency contact notification, I-9, W-4, drug test authorization. If you wanted to exclude any forms or anything like that, you could simply remove them simply by hitting the X here, or add additional forms. If you're using GlobalForms or you've created your own forms and you want to include a particular form, you could select it from the list here. In my case, I have a countless number of forms, but it could be any form that you've created up to that point. Once I've done that, I can click Send Paperwork, or if this is someone who perhaps you've sent paperwork in the past or anything like that, you could simply click Send Reminder. What will happen is when we hit the Send Paperwork button, it's going to do a couple different things. First thing is it's going to create a user account for that user to be able to log in and complete these forms. They're going to also get a PIN to help verify their identity. And then lastly, they're going to get an email, which they'll be able to click and complete these forms. So that email itself looks something like this. So if I hit Send Paperwork, they'll get an email containing a link to their forms, a username and password, and from there, if they're on either a mobile device or something like a laptop computer, they can fill out these forms assuming they have internet access. So with that information, we can click that link, pull up these forms, pull that up over here, and they're taking to our HR Essentials dashboard. So as this user is completing the onboarding forms or process, we can enter their applicant PIN, select Continue. We can enter any information about that person completing the form. In this case, it's myself. I'll enter my information. This is information that can be pre-populated on the forms that they complete. So there's no entering this information over and over and over again on each forms for your employees you're looking to onboard. We select continue. It's going to ask us to log in, just a second authentication for security purposes. We log in. And we're now shown any form that was sent to us. So as Steve mentioned earlier, you could use this for HR forms, but also any other paperwork. You know, I've seen community service organizations use this for onboarding in their own applications. It could be, the technology here could be leveraged many ways. In this case, we focus strictly on HR. But in this dashboard, I see every form I need to complete here. So I have my background check that I was sent, my direct deposit form, drug test authorization, W-4, I-9, and so on and so forth. These forms can be completed one by one. And so if we open, for example, our direct deposit form, the form will load and pre-populate with any information that I've entered previously during that process, right? So, or that's been entered previously during that process. And then we can enter any required fields. And if you're not familiar with our GlobalForms platform, it does enable or it does do some level of validation when users are entering information. So here, you know, we have a couple required fields denoted by our asterisk. We can also do things like verify that, for example, our 9-digit routing number is truly 9 digits. If we're asking for dates and things like that, we can automatically verify that the information meets the format of what we expect. So we also have the ability to perform wet signatures and submit our form. So that form's been submitted. We can close out of that. We can refresh our task list here, and you'll see our direct deposit form is now gone. So any employee who is completing these forms can ultimately iterate through these forms and complete each one from start to finish, and they'll be removed. The other thing to mention here too as well is if you have any forms which perhaps require additional steps. A good example of that is your federal I-9, right? If you're completing an I-9, an employer must verify the information of that I-9, verify identity and a number of other things before it's submitted. In that process, you know, a user can fill out this form itself and then ultimately have that route to another user in the process. Could be one level, could be several levels involved before it's finalized, but that's something worth mentioning there. So I'm going to exit my employee view here and jump back to my management dashboard. So we talked a little bit about visibility as well. So as you saw, that an employee can only see the tasks that are assigned to them. One thing you can also do from this management dashboard that's pretty neat is see anything that's pending, right? So if we have multiple applicants who are performing their onboarding paperwork, well, you can see who hasn't completed, who has completed it, and for example, is not completed as I-9. And if there's any forms that require some level of attention or approval. For example, we have a I-9 that requires our action here, and I, as the employer, can fill it up, open it up and fill out the remaining fields. So this is a kind of a two-step form. Someone's filled out the very beginning. Down below here, they've attached any ID. I can verify that, and then I can enter any required information as the employer would fill out here. So we'll do 12.7. Sign as myself. Additionally, as an employer, I can, if I need to, and I need to, perhaps something happened and I don't need to move forward with this form, I can simply delete it and exit the process or submit it into GlobalSearch. So every form that we complete here does integrate with our GlobalSearch platform. So any document we fill out here is generating an image in GlobalSearch with all the requisite index information. We'll talk about that in a few minutes here. Going back to the management dashboard, I can continue to review and act on these forms as needed, but we do have a couple other options here that I do want to talk about. The first one is the management of this application. You've seen as I filled through a couple of those forms, I've selected things like department and whatnot. You can maintain that completely within the solution here using our manage departments option. You can manage existing departments, delete them, or add new departments to that. Additionally, we also have a form that allows you to quickly create additional forms to add to the solution. So, when we looked at this from a solution standpoint, one of the obstacles that we've had in some of our prior forms products is quickly bootstrapping and building forms into a package like this. With this, we can create additional forms very rapidly with all the pre-built logic that you would need to integrate your own forms. So no longer would you need to hire Square 9 professional services to build you a form. You could very much do that yourself if you have the confidence to do so. We make it easy here using some pre-built templates. We have one for human resources forms, and if I was going to build something like a IT or hardware acceptance worksheet, or maybe accepting hardware and confirming serial numbers and things like that, we hit create there. We can quickly take advantage of some of the pre-built logic that you've seen already, such as pre-populating name, department, email address, as well as allow us to quickly integrate our own content into a form. So one thing you'll quickly notice here is we have a number of fields and controls, and then all this logic's built kind of around where we can add content. If you're not familiar with our GlobalForms product or building forms, we do have a number of education classes that are available to anyone who has interest in building GlobalForms, but very much it is a drag and drop operation. And if we, for example, drag over a text field, we can add a control and perhaps give it something like a name, for example, for something hardware, we'll say type of hardware. We can add additional fields like serial number and so on and so forth. Again, quickly build out our form. This is normally a process that could take several hours to get all the logic that you would need to include something like this in your workflow, now taken down to minutes. So one other area I wanted to also touch on here is our overall repository. So as I mentioned, with this product, it integrates seamlessly with our Business Essentials application. So if you are an existing customer of Square 9 and you're taking advantage of our Business Essentials database, or it's something that maybe you haven't poked at, or maybe you've already built out your own application for HR in your own Square 9, you can quickly integrate our Forms product into that solution. So every one of these forms submitted will go into GlobalSearch. That looks something like this. So under archives, we have a couple of our Business Essentials pre-built archives. We have accounts payable, accounts receivable, human resources is the one that we have open here. And we can have full visibility to any documents which have been submitted by that forms process. So no longer do you have staff scanning I-9s or scanning direct deposit forms or any of the forms that you've seen before. Very much you can fill them in digitally and have them entered into Square 9 as our repository. And from a form standpoint, they're organized into our pre-existing database. We see our onboarding forms here. We can also see any payroll documents here as well. If we double click to open any of these up, we can see the finished product there. For some of these forms, if you don't necessarily have a nice clean PDF that you want the data to represent or look like, you can take a advantage of our snapshot mapping that looks something like this. So if you double click on one of these forms here, you can essentially take an image of the form as it was submitted as a web page and store it in GlobalSearch. Any of the information that was entered there will be stored along with all your index data, so you can later search and locate it. A couple other things I want to touch on that's also exciting. In addition to this, we also do have, as part of this solution, a employee portal. So if there's any sort of repeat forms that a user may need to fill out, let's say annual enrollments coming up, and you have insurance forms that you want to expose, or anything like that, you can enable a employee to access commonly used forms. One I have here as an example is a PTO request, right? We're all going into GlobalSearch or at some point taking vacation time off. You can integrate forms like that as part of this platform, but quickly expose these forms for any internal employee to quickly fill out. You can also enable managers to access manager focused forms, things like exit interviews or performance evaluations. That can also be exposed by our internal employee portal that we have bundled with the HR Essentials package. And then the last piece I also want to mention, that's just good to know, we also have a forms gallery that also contains many examples of some of your common human resources forms, many of which can integrate with a solution like this. So if that's something that you're looking for examples of or form examples, and you're taking advantage of our GlobalForms product, you can very much view and download many of the forms that you've seen here today. With that said, I think that's all I had. I'll send it back to you, Steve.
Thank you, Dan. Nice job. Yeah, I think at this point, what we'd like to do is open it up to any questions from the audience. While we're doing that, please just, again, go ahead and type your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom. Right now we have nothing, so Dan, we must have answered everyone's questions, but we'll leave that open for a few minutes. I did want to mention a couple of things. Again, Dan mentioned at the end the Forms library, which is a very powerful tool. Again, that ability to bootstrap forms and give you live examples that you can use either as replacements for your own documents or as templates to start off with, again, where you can just add a piece field, as he had shown, to a form to make it your own, is all possible. If you'd like to find that, it is in our documentation that's available online. You'll see that on the support page or on our website under resources, and simply search for the forms library, and you'll see a huge collection. I think there's probably 50 or 60 forms in there that you can select from, download, and make your own. With that said, I still don't have any questions. If there are any, please, by all means, ask us now, or we'll give you the rest of your day back. Okay, is this HR package ready for prime time? Absolutely, yes, it is. It is ready to go. It is actually being sold actively right now. And again, it's something that we can make available to you at any time. Like your hire to retire comment, but sometimes it's hire to fire. How do you handle archiving? Again, I don't believe, Dan, that you have a workflow set up on this one as far as archiving the documents, taking, fired employees and putting them, or I should say terminated employees, and putting them and archiving those documents. But it would be a very simple process. What it would look like is just a workflow on the back end that would simply look at the date of termination, and that would automatically save those records for a preset period of time. Most people will go 7 years, although there are different mandates based on the type of document that it is. Dan, here's a question for you. Is there any way for an applicant to upload an image, such as a copy of a driver's license, and is it secure?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're taking advantage of our Square 9 cloud platform and you have our HR Essentials package installed, from a security standpoint, all traffic's encrypted, so anyone uploading or entering data is secured. Additionally, you can absolutely upload files to the platform. So, for example, if you have a copy of a license or anything like that, you can certainly do so. I can quickly show you guys here. But in a form, we can have things like upload controls, and maybe I have a license. I want to drag over there. We can see and attach it there. So if you have any sort of supporting documentation that needs to be included as part of a form, very much it can be uploaded to a form.
Great. Next question comes from Stephen again. Any licensing minimums? Are they concurrent licenses? So GlobalSearch is again licensed concurrently. And again, it is has a 3-user license minimum to get started in most of our packages. With that said, GlobalForms does not include concurrent licensing. You can fill out a form and you do not have to be signed in and using a GlobalSearch license in order to complete a form. If you were a manager, however, who was signed in and handling that, you would be consuming a license as you normally would in GlobalSearch. But again, people coming in and just filling out forms, people coming to your website maybe and completing a forms package, or if you're sending one out, there would be no licensing tied to that. Okay. Lana said, awesome. Thank you, Dan, for showing her that forms piece. And Stephen said, thank you as well. So that's all we have for now. I'll give it one more minute, just if anybody has any late questions, by all means. We've had some good questions so far. I also see some stuff. Oh no, that's different. Looking under the chat as well, Dan, just to see if anything was hiding under there. All right. Well, I do want to thank everyone again for coming to today's webinar. We've really enjoyed these sessions where we've had an opportunity to go out and show you how the technology is put to work. GlobalSearch, GlobalForms, and Global Capture are very powerful platforms that can be used for any number of applications. But again, the challenge that I've been putting out to Dan and his team is simply show people what they can do with this technology. Show them practical use cases and package it up in a way that they can consume it easily and leverage it to improve their own internal business processes. Dan, I think you did a great job with this one. Look forward to what you have up your sleeve next. We'll continue to do these types of sessions to keep you all informed about what we're up to. But if I don't speak to you prior, I hope everyone has a great holiday and enjoys the time with family and friends. And we thank you again for coming and joining us today. Take care.